Okay, this week we're going to look at chapters 3 and 4. Again, I'm going to post them separately so that if you need to just review one, you're not having to go through all of it to get to a certain point if you want to double check something. Chapter 3, which is on pages 58 and 59, is where it starts in your book, deals with self-motivation and goal setting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and get into some of the motivation theories behind self-motivation. The learning objectives listed on page 59 explain how needs and motives influence motivation, identify several needs and motives that could propel you into action, explain how engagement relates to self-motivation, explain why and how goals contribute to self-motivation. Describe how to set effective goals and the problems sometimes created by goals. And we're going to talk about what they call SMART goals, which is an acronym that helps you set realistic goals and actually keep them so that you can actually complete your goals. Describe several specific techniques of self-motivation. Apply the self-discipline model to achieving your goals. And again, all of those learning objectives can be found on page 59 in your book. So let's start talking about the need theory of motivation. I bet you all know a lot of people that say they set goals all the time, but they really never complete their goals. Or some people that don't write down their goals, or some people that don't even set goals. I'm a firm believer that goals are drivers of self-motivation, and they will help you get to where you want to go. However, they have to be well written, they have to be measurable, they have to actually be realistic and not something that's pie in the sky that no matter what you did that you would never attain. And they have to be written down. Writing them down is like making a commitment to yourself, and it really does influence your thinking about them versus keeping them in your head in terms of getting them accomplished. The need theory of motivation can be found on pages, it starts on page 60 in your book. And let's talk a little bit about what we mean when we say need. Need is basically an internal striving and an urge to do something, such as I need a drink when I'm thirsty. So if that's the case, what it's going to do is make me get up and go get a drink. Okay, so that need to have a drink actually urges me to do something about it. Motive is a little bit different than need. And again, these definitions are in your book. On the left-hand side, they kind of pull them out of the reading and put them in a little column so that they're easy to see. Motive is more of an inner drive that moves you to do something. This motive is usually based on a need or desire and results in the intention to attain an appropriate goal. Needs and motives are very closely related, but the two terms, and they are in many cases used interchangeably. For example, you might hear someone say it's a recognition need or it's a recognition motive. In that case, those would refer to the same thing. The need theory of motivation, which you can find on page 60, they kind of draw out a nice diagram. It shows that you start with the need. A person experiences a craving or an internal urging. And then that need creates drive, okay? And then that drive basically creates an action, and then the action is taken, which creates satisfaction because it actually satisfies the need. So we'll go through it with a specific example, but I'm going to go through what's on the screen right now. A need is an internal striving or urge to do something to maintain your equilibrium. It can be as simple as getting a glass of water because you're thirsty. A want is something you would like to have, but it's not necessary to keep your system balanced. Okay? I want to have a mansion in Costa Rica, but this is not something that I have to have in order to sustain me or keep me living. Unsatisfied needs motivate us until they become satisfied, and the water is a very good glass of that. It's a very good example. If I'm thirsty and I don't do something about it, that need is going to continue to bother me and urge me to do something to fulfill it. Self-interest plays a key role in motivation. People ask, what's in it for me, before engaging in behavior. So keep that in mind, especially any of you that are leading teams or are looking to go into leadership or management. When you're trying to motivate, you do need to make sure you cover that area in terms of explaining to your people why this is something that needs to be done and what it's going to do for them and for the team. Here's the example that's in the book. You have a need. That need drives you to satisfy the need. That drive causes you to take action, and then that action causes satisfaction because it's reduced the drive and, of course, the original need. And again, I'll give a very simple explanation of this. I'm very thirsty and I want a glass of water. That is the need. I'm thirsty. That thirst drives me to do something about it. So that I can quench my thirst, I need to do something. So that becomes my drive. I'm thirsty, I have to satisfy my need. That throws me into action, and that action could be as simple as going to the sink and getting a glass of water, going to the refrigerator and getting a glass of lemonade or a glass of milk. But it causes me to take an action, and that action hopefully is what's going to satisfy my need. The example they show here, a person engages in goal-seeking behavior. I'm giving you a simplistic example. If you were setting goals, the goal would be what would help you accomplish your need. Satisfaction, of course, once you take the action, then there is satisfaction. The thirst goes away. I get a drink of water. I'm no longer thirsty. My drive is no longer pushing me to do something, and now, I feel refreshed. So that's kind of the need theory of motivation. Again, found in your book on page 60. Important needs and motives people attempt to satisfy. Okay? Achievement is one of those, the desire to accomplish something difficult. Okay, for some people, the need for achievement is a very important thing for them. And they look for responsibility and they look for different things to do in order to achieve them, because that is what makes them feel good. So it's the desire to accomplish something difficult for its own sake. They have a need for achievement. Power. We know some people like this, people that have a high need and feel compelled to control and power, whether it be people, resources, or money. They act usually with vigor and determination. They invest a lot of time in thinking into ways to alter behavior and thinking of others in order to control. They care about their personal standing and those around them. The need power can be satisfied in many cases through occupying high-level positions or becoming a highly influential person. It also can be carried too far when you have an intense desire to control if you're a manager, you become what's called a micromanager, which is not exactly what you want to be and really get the most bang out of your buck for your team. But the power need is the desire to control. Affiliation, a person that has a need for affiliation seeks out close relationships. They tend to be very loyal as friends or employees. They like to be around people, and they like close relationships with people. This is their motive. This is what motivates them to do certain things. Recognition. There are people that have a strong need for recognition and want to be acknowledged for their contributions and efforts. This can be very different depending on, the employee, depending on the organization. Is there a formal recognition program? Every employee likes to be recognized differently. What means something to me for recognition may not mean something to you. When I used to manage, when I first would take over a new team, I had a little survey that I had them fill out that asked them things like, their favorite color, just kind of some personal things. Do they have any animals at home? Do they have any kids? If you were to be recognized, what form of recognition would mean something to you? And it's very different, because there's nothing worse than being recognized and being recognized with something that means nothing to you. And I'll give you a good example. At one point in my life, I was recognized and I was given a pair of basketball tickets to a basketball game, a big game, but I don't watch basketball. So it really meant nothing to me. I mean, the job well done, thank you, but I gave the tickets away because that probably was not the best way to recognize me for a job well done. So it is important, if you ever lead or manage people, that you understand what drives that person. Some people like the actual formal recognition where you say something in front of other people and maybe they get a little plaque or a little something to put on their desk. Some people like money. Some people would appreciate, a dinner out for their family. Some people would appreciate just flex time and having some time off if they've been working on a big project. Everybody's different, so it's important to understand that and know what drives your people. Order. People with a strong need for order want to achieve arrangement, balance, neatness, precision. They want to have everything just so. Sometimes we call those people a little anal retentive, but they really just like the balance that comes with everything being precise and arranged and very orderly and neat. Risk-taking and thrill-seeking. We do have people that actually crave constant excitement, whether it's on the job, whether it's in their personal life. They have a need to constantly take that risk or constantly be doing something new. These are good people to have in the company because they're always willing to work on new projects, and they give you the example of high technology area, in the high technology era in which many people were involved and things were constantly changing minute by minute in some cases. So you probably know people like this. These are the people that like to, jump out of airplanes in their free time and go parachuting, or they're not the person that's afraid to take a project that may be very complicated, or even a project that is already having problems, because they like that challenge. They need that thrill, and they seek that. Then you have conscientious needs and motives. The desire to be dependable, responsible, persevering can be regarded as a psychological need related to a strong need for achievement in some cases. But again, this is what motivates that person. Okay, they want to appear this way. They want to be regarded this way. They are the people that are always on time. They're the people that you can depend on to show up at meetings, to take the notes, to remember the stuff that you're saying or you're handing out, etc. If you want to kind of take a look at where you fall in that realm, you might want to, on your own, do the quiz. It's a human relations self-assessment quiz that's 3.1 on page 63 in your book. It measures your tendency toward being conscientious and just how conscientious you are. Some of these quizzes are good to take because sometimes they're eye-openers in terms of how you look at yourself or how you viewed yourself, as long as you're taking it and you're truly honest with your statements. And sometimes we can learn from the self-assessment quizzes that we take. All right, if you look on page 62, 63, and 64 in your book, we're going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've never heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're going to. It's something that you'll hear about through your life if you take any kind of a motivation class, whether it's self-motivating or whether it's some type of a leadership class dealing with motivation. You also usually cover it in a basic leadership class. And basically, Abraham Maslow really believed that people strive to satisfy basically 5 types of needs. And not only do they strive to satisfy those needs, but they do it in a very specific order before they move on to the next need. And I believe I actually posted a picture of the Maslow hierarchy of needs pyramid out there for this week, but it's also in your book on page 64. And you start with the physiological need, which is actually the bottom of the pyramid, and everything builds up from that. And these are needs that are very simplistic. They're things that we all have to have: food, water, shelter, sleep, okay, or we don't survive. So these are very basic needs. Once those basic needs are met, and we're constantly getting those needs taken care of on a daily basis, then the next need that pops up is a need for safety. Not only physical safety and away from any type of injury or harm, but also a feeling of being safe emotionally. And both of these needs are usually things that we can self-satisfy, in the sense that once I find food and I have a little bit of shelter and I have some water, I'm a happy camper. And then I want to now look at feeling safe. So then I do what I need to make myself feel safe. Now I'm in an enclosed shelter. I feel good physically. I don't feel threatened mentally. And once those needs are satisfied, then I start to have other needs. And those needs are basically the middle of the pyramid, which become the social needs. These needs start to then have an interaction with people. The need to feel loved, the need for affection, the need to feel like you belong to a group. They center more on a person's interaction with other people than the first 2 needs did. Once those needs are met, the social needs, then you actually start going into the top 2 tiers of the pyramid. And I make this sound like it's really easy to do. Once you start getting to the esteem needs and the self-actualizing needs, these are much harder to do and fulfill, and they're not something that is done quickly. Esteem needs basically represent the individual's demand to be seen as a person of worth, not only by others, but by him or herself. It becomes very important at that point in time, once the other 3 needs, physiological, safety, and social, have been met. Then once the esteem needs are met, then you go to the top of the pyramid, which is self-actualizing, which is basically the highest level of needs. And these needs include self-fulfillment and personal development. Again, you don't have these needs until all of the others are in place. That's when you start to feel these needs. If you look on page 63 in your book, there is a short quiz. I think I mentioned it earlier, to just find out how conscientious you are in terms of whether or not that is a strong kind of psychological need for you or not. I highly encourage you to take the self-quiz and see what the results are and what they tell you about yourself. Maslow also recognized that aside from these 5 classes of needs in this hierarchy, that this is only a partial description of human needs, that there are 3 other classes of needs: cognitive needs, aesthetic needs, and transcendence needs, or what he would refer to as B. And I think I moved too fast. I'm sorry, I had to slow down. So the aesthetic needs are needs related to a need for symmetry, order, beauty, and this class of needs fits below the self-actualization need, so it's below the top of the pyramid on the hierarchy. Cognitive needs relate to needs to know, understand, explore, and this particular need fits above the esteem need, but just below the aesthetic need. So basically you're going to have the esteem need, you're going to have the cognitive need, then the aesthetic need, and then the self-actualization need, if you were following the pyramid. The transcendence need, or B values, refers to basically contribute to human welfare, finding higher meaning in life, kind of an extension of the self-actualization needs, self-examination, wanting to go do good in the world, those kind of things. These are what we refer to as transcendence needs, and this particular need actually is on top of the hierarchy and is an extension of that self-actualization need. The reason we study these needs is because understanding this hierarchy of needs helps us focus not only on self-motivation, but when you're leading people, also helps you focus on how to motivate and how to lead other people. Again, and you're going to find this throughout the book everywhere, on page 65, there's another little self-assessment quiz, and this one is your standing on the need hierarchy. So it kind of takes a look at which needs are more important to you. It kind of rates that in terms of the physiological, safety, love. I think those are oh no, it has them all. Esteem and self-actualization, and you can kind of rate yourself and see where you're at in terms of those needs, and in the sense of what is the most important to you on that need structure. Engagement is part of self-motivation. This is on page 66 over into page 67. Strongly motivated worker is engaged in work and committed to the job and company. Well, that makes sense. If you're motivated, you like what you're doing, which is part of motivation, then you're going to be very engaged, whether it's at work or whether it's even in your personal life. If a person's engaged, it leads to injecting themselves into the job or into the task, whatever they're doing at hand. Work engagement is defined in the book as high levels of personal investment in the work tasks performed in a job. Keep in mind, the book relates a lot of this to the job place, but this would also be true in your personal life as well. It could be a task, it could be an interest. If you are fully engaged, you're throwing yourself into that interest or into that task at hand. An engaged worker stands out because only 30% of employees are committed to doing a good job. Look at that percentage. That is an incredibly low percentage. That means 70% of employees in the workplace today are not engaged and not committed to doing a good job. That's kind of scary. And we'll talk about maybe why that's the case. An engaged worker helps an organization prosper, obviously. If you have everybody likes being there and they're really engaged and they're really doing a good job, then the company's going to do really well. Self-motivated workers are more likely to be engaged or committed to the organization. So the more you can have someone self-motivate themselves, the more likely they are going to have worker engagement. And if they are engaged, then they're going to throw themselves into the job and they're going to be committed and do a fantastic job for the organization. It all kind of links together. So among some of the initiatives companies take to kind of enhance engagement or encourage engagement are opportunities for career advancement. You know, if you do this and this and this, you have an opportunity to move into this position, whether it be a lateral move for some people that don't necessarily want to climb up the corporate ladder, but do want to develop and continue to grow and have opportunity laterally to work into different positions in the company. Also, they will do things like encourage employees to be more engaged by celebrating, you know, job successes, project successes, maybe a high month of revenue for the company. All of this is geared toward helping people become more motivated and encourage that kind of work engagement that they're looking for. Also, some companies look at doing things like giving employees breathing room and how they should do their tasks. What a novel concept. In other words, not micromanaging, tell them what the goal is and what the end deliverable is, and letting the employee go forth and do what they need to do and be responsible enough to get it completed, which is really one of the best ways to build self-motivation in any type of an employee. And encouragement of workers to bring forth problems or issues to managers, not keep it to themselves, but basically the open door policy, which in many companies is a great idea and they really abide by it. And in some companies, people say they have an open door policy, and then someone goes in to talk about something and it's not really an open door policy, and they end up in a roundabout way paying the price after they've gone in to talk to management, which is not the idea of what open door is supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to come in and talk without any repercussion happening to you, whether it's a problem, whether it's a complaint, whether it's even something the manager is doing. So these are all things that in some cases companies and organizations try to do in the hopes of motivating employees or workers to be strongly engaged in the job and be able to obviously help the organization prosper. We're going to look next at the self-determination and engagement theory, which is found on page 67. And again, this is kind of defined out at the sideline. The motivation theory contending that we are most deeply engaged and do our most creative work when we feel that we are acting according to our own will and pursuing goals we find meaningful. Well, that kind of makes sense to me. I'm much more engaged if it's my own decision, my own will, and I'm pursuing what I deem are meaningful goals. That's kind of a given. This self-determination theory basically talks about doing exciting work that meets our needs and is more important in some cases than external rewards to try to stay motivated. When you're really geeked about something, when you really believe in something or you really like something, you're not necessarily in it for rewards or recognition. You do it because you love it. Okay, and that's what this theory is. If you could get all people to really do what they love and it's their choice, and these goals mean something to them, then they're going to be deeply engaged. Motivation develops internally based on needs for competency, autonomy, and relatedness. Doing exciting work that meets our needs is more important than external rewards. I kind of covered that. An engaged worker focuses on exciting tasks and connections more than external rewards. And, it just goes without saying, think of something you really love. You would do it, whether someone was congratulating you on doing it or recognizing you on doing it. It's something that you truly believe in. It's your choice. You want to do it. You're more connected, and therefore you're more motivated. They give a good example of some things on page 68, employee engagement at Coca-Cola. It's a good article. I suggest that you kind of read through it in terms of some of the things they do to approach employee engagement within their company. The advantages of goals. We talk about goals, we talk about personal goals, we talk about work goals, and of course self-motivation obviously comes into play whenever you're doing any kind of goals. But what are the advantages of goals? Well, reasonable goals, always improve performance. They need to be a little bit challenging so that, it is a goal. But they need to be not so challenging that they're unrealistic and that someone couldn't possibly attain them no matter what they did. A goal is actually defined in your book on page 69 as an event, circumstance, object, or condition a person strives to attain. That's why it has to be a little bit difficult. If it comes easily, you're not striving to get there. It's really not a goal. All right? Goals can instill purpose, challenge, and meaning into ordinary tasks. So they can inspire in some cases and get that person that maybe isn't motivated, self-motivated. Goals focus our efforts into a specific direction, so we're not running all willy-nilly and going off in 16 different directions. If we have a goal, we can work toward that goal and put our efforts toward that to accomplish it, and then move on to the next goal. Goals increase our chances for success because they serve as a standard for measuring success, which is an important factor here. Goals have to be measurable. If you don't write your goal in such a manner that you have an actual quantitative way to measure it, how do you know that you're achieving your goal, even in the baby steps that you're taking toward your goal? You have to be able to measure it so that you can see that you are moving forward to the end goal that you want to accomplish. And of course, goals serve as self-motivators and energizers. This is something I feel strongly about. I have 3 different lists of written goals at home that are my personal goals. And also I have goals here in the office as a faculty instructor, what my goals are for teaching. But my personal goals I've had for years, and they change, and I add things, and I accomplish goals, and they get crossed off the list. But I have a goal. I love animals, if you haven't picked up on that yet. And I have a list of goals of things that I want to accomplish and do with animals in my lifetime before I die. And these are all written out in terms of what we talk about SMART goals, where you state the goal and what you want the end objective to be, what the measurements are in place to do there, and how to get there. I have another one that's a list of, I love to travel. It's a list of goals for the places I intend to go and travel to and what I want to do when I'm there. Again, with specific time frames. Now, some of these are long-term goals because I've had some of these for a while. Some of these have been crossed off my list. Some new ones have been added. And then I have some personal goals that mean something to me. Years ago, before I got my master's degree, that was one of my personal goals on my personal list. Writing a book is another goal on my personal list. So I highly encourage you to, if there is something you really want to do, to really very specifically clarify that goal, the measurements, and a time frame, and write it down. You're more apt to accomplish it if you write it down. This is just a proven fact. It almost is like you're signing a contract with yourself. It makes you more committed to write it down. Learning goal orientation refers to focus on acquiring new skills, mastering new situations, and we're looking at page 70 and 71 right now. Okay? Performing goal orientation is aimed at wanting to demonstrate and validate competency by seeking favorable judgments about competence. So a learning goal refers to you're trying to acquire a new skill or master a new situation. If you're trying to do that, that is a learning goal. Okay? For example, I wanted to get my master's degree. That would be a learning goal. A performing goal is something you've already pretty much mastered, but you want to demonstrate your mastery of that and validate by others that you are competent in doing that and that you have performed as you should at the task or the situation that you're dealing with. And then desire for feedback. People with learning goal orientation are more likely to seek feedback on performance because they're learning. So that makes sense. When you're in a learning mode of operation, you're going to ask people for more feedback. What do you think about this? I wrote this paper. Could you read over my thesis? Could you do, basically because you're in a learning phase and you want that feedback so that you can tweak whatever goal you're working on or whatever you're doing to get it to where you want it. Again, all of this is in your book on page 70 and 71. Normally, many of us have both types of goals on our list of goals. We have learning goals and we have performing goals that we have written out. Learning and performing orientations toward goals, impact on work performance. Attempting to master skills often leads to better results than attempting to impress others. Okay, when we talk about either one of these types of goals having an impact, when you attempt to master skills because you want to master them, not because you're trying to impress someone else, then you're going to probably have better results at doing that. Better relationships with supervisors. When you have these kind of goals, learning goal orientation leads to better relationship with the supervisor in the workplace because of higher performance and job satisfaction. You're learning something, your performance is changing, you're getting better at something, the employee is going to feel more satisfied, and in many cases this is going to improve relationships with your supervisors or managers. The purpose of learning goal orientation is to engage in discovery and think imaginatively. Okay, you're learning. That's why it's a learning goal. Goals are the most important tools companies use to get things done. In every company I've worked in, including here at the college, we have had to set goals. When I was in telecommunication, we had to set goals. When I was a restaurant manager, I had to set goals. And actually, both in industry, in telecommunications, and when I was in restaurant, the goals were tied to my performance and to my bonus. So if I did not accomplish my goals, which obviously were measurable, because if you can't measure it, then you can't see whether I accomplished it. If I did not accomplish my goals that were set, it affected my performance review, and it also affected any bonus that I might have been able to get based on that particular goal. So most companies use goals. If you don't know how to write them, you need to learn how to write them. They're not always easy, especially the measurable part and getting it really clear and specific. We tend to be too generic and high level when we write our goals. We have to really get down to the basic actual root of the goal, but you need to learn how to write goals. Employees throughout organizations support organizational goals through specific goals. And usually what you have in most organizations is you have a mission statement of the organization, whatever their mission of that company is. And then they're at that very high level, there are goals set at a very high level in the company to attain the mission of the organization, say at the CEO, VP level. Then the managers below those people have goals that feed up to the goals of the CEO, VP, and therefore it goes downward. So my goal would actually feed up to helping my managers make their goals, which would feed up to the VPs, CEOs making their goals, which helps us basically accomplish the mission of the organization. So it's kind of how it works. Your goal at the company usually in some way, shape, or form feeds into the mission that is part of the organization. And that's basically, when you're explaining goals to folks that you lead or you manage, that's their piece of it. That's how they are a part of the goal, is by what they do at this level, it helps accomplish the major goal, which is basically to accomplish the mission of the company. Managers and employees have to communicate frequently about goal, otherwise goals are soon forgotten. They have to discuss both goal progress frequently. If you set your goals with your supervisor or manager, you definitely don't want to wait a year when it's performance review time to follow up. You need to talk in between there to see where the progress is, where things are at. If you're having some problems in achieving your goal, this should be brought up so that when your performance appraisal comes around, it's not a surprise. There's nothing on there that should surprise you and come out of the blue, because you and your manager or supervisor have been talking all along throughout the year about your goals, what you've accomplished, maybe some things that had to be refocused or changed. So there shouldn't be any surprises come time to look at your performance. And if your manager isn't approaching you, because some companies this happens, then you schedule an appointment to talk to your manager, just so that you're both on the same page when it comes to looking at your goals. Personal goals should be set in conjunction with career goals, should be integrated to help achieve the balance between work and personal life. I do really believe that you need a balance between work and personal life. Sometimes that's hard to achieve depending on what you're doing in your career and where you're at in your career. It can be done. In my early days, I really was into my career in industry, and I really didn't make sure I had that balance in my life. I spent most of my time trying to learn and grow in my career, and what I found out later in life was I missed out on a lot of things along the way. In other words, I didn't stop to smell the roses along the way because I was too career driven. So at a later point in time, I had to refocus to say, whoa, wait a minute, life is too short. You need this balance. You certainly need this balance if you have, a personal life with family, children, because any of these kind of interpersonal relationships take time, and you need to spend time with the people that are important to you. Types of personal goals could be social and family life type goals. They could be hobby or interest goals. They could be physical and mental health goals. They could be a career goal, aside from just the goals your company is having you set toward their mission, but you may have some other goals you want to accomplish in your career. Could be a financial goal. There's a lot of different types of personal goals that you can set for yourself. And then you have to do action plans to support your goals. Basically, this translates goals into actions. It's one thing to say, I want to take a trip to Costa Rica. That's my goal. But how am I going to get there? What am I going to do to get there? And there's a lot of steps between I want to do this and getting there. And what is my time frame to do all these little steps? Because if you don't put a time frame on it, you won't accomplish it. It'll stay out there forever. as you're trying, yeah, I'm working on it, because you haven't set yourself a deadline where you have to achieve some of the little steps within the action plan that work toward the goal. Again, going into this is on, basically starts on page 71, goes into 72, where it talks about a little bit about action plans. Guidelines for goal setting: express each goal as a positive statement, formulate specific goals, formulate concise. They need to be concise. They need to be as specific as you can get them. Set them realistically, and they need to be a stretch. They can't be something you can just accomplish because it comes easy to you. Then it's not something you're striving for. And you set goals for different time periods. You normally have some short-term goals that can be goals that are achievable realistically, anywhere from a 3-month, 6-month time frame to a 2-year time frame. Those would be short-year goals. And then your long-term goals are goals that are anything over 2 years, 5 years, even 10-year goals, okay, that take a little longer to get there. You always look at your goals. You always update your goals. Remember, when you have a long-term goal, things happen in life. When those things happen that could affect your action plan, then you're going to have to go back and readdress that action plan and realign it based on whatever in life has happened, so that you don't fall off the wagon from your goal, but you maybe have to put in a couple extra steps now that when you first planned out the goal, you weren't going to have to do. But now, because something has happened, you're having to change the action plan a little bit. But you need to keep up with your goals and your action plans if you truly intend on accomplishing them. Strive for synergy, fit, or compatibility among your goals. The more your goals can kind of fit together, like they talked about personal and work goals, where they kind of align with each other, the better that will be, and the more synergistic it will be for you as you're striving to reach those goals. Now, this is basically what is talked about in the book in terms of how to set goals. What I gave you to read this week is an article out there on SMART goals, and that's normally, if you're in an organization and you're asked to write goals, they're normally going to ask you to write it in the SMART goal format. And the SMART is an acronym for all the different pieces, just like we discussed here, of the goal. Number one being specific. The more specific the goal, the easier it is to do the action plan and to actually set your time frames for that action plan. So make sure you read the article. There will be questions on the quiz about SMART goals, so make sure you go through it and you understand it. I'm sure some of you have already written them for the organizations that you work for today or are familiar with them, but for those of you that aren't, make sure that you go out and you take a look at that article and read through it. Do goals sometimes create problems? Yes, they do. They can. Inflexibility. Can focus too much on goals and ignore emergencies. Goal becomes obsessive. Okay? You become inflexible. Some people put a goal down and they can't, no, I got to accomplish my goal. I can't deal with that right now. I got to do this. And it becomes more of an obsession. That's not good. I mean, you want to accomplish your goals. You don't want to become obsessed by it, because life does happen, and you have to be able to be flexible to try to deal with the emergencies that may come up, or some of the other things that will have to be dealt with before you can continue to move forward, maybe on one or two of your goals. So keep that in mind when you're working toward your goals. Understand that life happens. And sometimes when life happens, you have to address that, and then you're going to have to come back and realign your goal. Loss of interest in the task, especially with performing goal orientation. It's one thing when it's a learning goal because you're still learning and it's innovative and it's new. It's different when it's a performing goal. Sometimes if you've been doing it long enough, you start to lose interest in the task. You're not energizing yourself enough to do it. You carry out your responsibilities, every day, day in and day out. In terms of performing certain tasks, you need to be aware of that. Engaging in unethical behavior might disregard how the goal is attained. Okay, I want to have $500,000 in the bank, and this is such a big goal to me, and this is all I can see, and this is all I want, that I'm going to go rob a bank to get my $500,000. Well, no, that's not the answer. Okay. Again, I carry it to the extreme. When you're in a work environment, there are people that will do unethical things in a work environment to try to attain their goals. That's not the way you want to attain goals. And in some cases, you could end up getting fired depending on the unethical behavior that you do, particularly in a workplace. Slacking off after the goal is reached. After attaining the goal, the worker might decrease their effort. This is true. However, that's why you have multiple goals and you have them in different time frames. So if I accomplish my 3-month goal, I still have my 6-month or my year goal. And aside from those, I'm still working toward my 5-year goal and my 10-year goal. So if you have goals at different time frames, that kind of helps from someone slacking off after they reach a goal. Believe me, when you do attain a goal, it's worth every ounce of celebration that you can give it, but then you continue to move on to the next goals that you have set for yourself. Self-motivation techniques. So how do I motivate myself? Well, one way is to set goals for yourself. Support long-range goals with smaller goals that are set for shorter time spans. This way you have some achievement, so you don't get frustrated because you're not achieving goals, because the one you want is such a big goal that it's 5 years out. But in the meantime, you can set some interim smaller or short-term goals that are still moving you in that direction, but that you can at least accomplish and see that you're moving toward the end goal that you want. Find intrinsically motivating work. Okay, leads to involvement in the task at hand and meaningful work. Such work has personal meaning based on your values and interest. Obviously, the more you enjoy the work you're doing, the more motivated you're going to be. That goes without saying. If you really like going to your job and you like what you do, and it aligns with your values and interests, you're going to be very self-motivated. Get feedback on your performance. Positive feedback always acts as a reward, okay, and also may lead to setting goals upward, but it always feels good when you're doing something to get some feedback, and if it's positive, this also helps motivate you. Same thing with your personal goals. As I said, the book's referring more to, a work environment, but the same thing applies when you're dealing with your personal goals as well. Apply behavior modification to yourself. Decide on actions you want to increase, and then decide a suitable set of rewards and punishments. Okay, so if you don't think you're moving in the right direction, or you are, but you're not moving quick enough, then decide which actions you want to really move on, and set some rewards up for yourself. Now, this is going to sound pretty crazy, but some days I'm just so tired and I have so much to do at home that cleaning the house is just an effort for me. And it's the last thing on earth I want to do after I've been working all week. So I basically say to myself, okay, Andy, if you will clean the kitchen, and if you do this and this and this in the kitchen, and I'll actually list out what I want to do and what I get done, then guess what? You can go to Dairy Queen and get yourself an ice cream. I reward myself. It's a little silly reward for myself, but it's my little motivator to make me do something that I really am not very motivated to do, but so that I can get it done. And it can be anything. It can be out, if you do this today, you can take yourself to the movie tomorrow and have a day off. Those are little things that I do to reward myself. And, I suggest doing the same thing when you're trying to do some things or get some things done that you want to. If it's a short-term goal and you're feeling frustrated, think of some actions that you may want to take to increase working toward that goal, and then set up some rewards and punishments if you don't do it for yourself. No one there to do it. In a work situation, sometimes this is done by management. Improve your skills relevant to your goals. Expectancy theory states that motivation improves if people believe effort will lead to desired outcomes. So, if you know what your outcome is, start working on skills that you think are relevant to that end outcome or that end goal. Raise your level of self-expectation. The Galileo effect is improving your performance through raising your own expectations. Okay, so these are all different techniques you can use to motivate yourself, as simple as I do with trying to do something at home that needs to be done that I don't feel like doing, or really setting some things up into your major life goals as rewards and as punishment to keep you motivated. Develop a strong work ethic. Commitment to the idea that most work is valuable, commit to that idea, and that hard work is joyful leads automatically to strong motivation. It obviously helps if you love what you're doing. It's why I highly encourage students to really look at the career they want to go into and make sure it's something they enjoy. You spend a lot of time in the workplace and with the people that you work with, so it makes a big difference. If you love what you're doing, then you'll enjoy going into that work environment every week or every day or whatever the case may be, versus going into a job that you really hate or can't stand doing. So it's easier to develop that work ethic when it's something that you just love going to do. You'll also be very energized if you're doing something that you love. The 4 key components of self-discipline. Commit to a mission and goals. What are you trying to accomplish? I'm trying to clean my kitchen. Intense concentration and focus, the heart of self-discipline. I am going to do this today. If it takes me all day on Saturday, I am going to do this. Minimize excuses or minimization of excuse making. No excuses for why it's not accomplished. I'm feeling tired right now. I think maybe I'll go sit down and watch an hour of TV, just an hour so I can relax, and then I'll come back to cleaning the kitchen some more. Delay of gratification. Put aside immediate pleasure for the long-range gain. Instead of watching TV for a minute and settling down and getting comfortable with that, if I keep working at this, I will be done in 1 more hour, and then I can go to Dairy Queen and get my ice cream. So delay that immediate gratification for the long-range gain, which you'll feel much better once you accomplish the goal. You'll go like, yeehaw, I got it done, and whatever reward that you have put in place for yourself. The 4 key components of self-discipline. This is located in your book, and it is on, I turned my page here. It is on page 77. Self-discipline, you need to commit to the mission and goals. You need to use intense concentration and focus to commit to those mission and goals. Minimize your excuses, and when you start hearing yourself come up with them, go and stop it, and delay immediate gratification for the long-term gratification of accomplishing the goal and whatever reward you may have set up for yourself if it's a personal goal, or whatever you're going to feel if it's a work goal when you accomplish the end goal. So all of this is in the book. Again, there's another self-assessment test on your own self-discipline tendencies on page 78 and 79. Always interesting to see if you are highly self-disciplined or you're just kind of average, or maybe you're not too good in that area and something that you need to work on. Just take a look at that. Then also the summary review on page 82. pretty much goes through most of what I covered in the slides. I suggest you review that as well before the quiz. The quiz will be on chapters 3 and 4 this week. And that's it for chapter 3. I will be posting this today and hopefully also posting chapter 4.